So today I'm joined by some fantastic panelists that'll help me as we unlock and officially announce the results of our 2021 CAO survey. I'm Tim Lashua, a partner with our accounting advisory services practice in Silicon Valley. Joining me today is Aaron Pollock, Dara Bazzano, and Jim Murphy. Aaron is a senior vice president and the chief accounting officer at Qualcomm, which is a $33+ billion wireless technology leader, where she has global responsibilities for accounting operations, external reporting, revenue assurance, and accounting shared services. Erin's somebody I've known for many years and always have trusted her judgment as it relates to the chief accounting officer's role. She currently lives in San Diego with her husband and enjoys cooking and everything that San Diego has to offer. We also have Dara Bazzano. Dara is a great personal friend. She's also the SVP and Chief Accounting Officer at T-Mobile. She's overseeing the T-Mobile Sprint finance integration and also has responsibilities for technical and corporate accounting, reporting, internal control, finance operations, and finance process, project, and program teams leading transformational efforts. She prides herself on being a diverse and inclusive leader and is also the independent director at Self Inc. and also on the international board of Girls on the Run. Dara has lived here in California as well for many years with her 4 kids and amazing husband. And I learned in this process, she's also an avid racer. So something to get to know Dara about. And then my partner in crime here, Jim Murphy. Jim is a partner in our finance transformation practice in Silicon Valley and has really been driving digital finance transformation for many years and has a great deal of experience. Jim's not only a great partner, but he's also a competitive basketball coach where he's coached his daughter's basketball teams. And I think for the last 8 years, Jim, you've been coaching the 8th grade girls team as well. So well-rounded group of individuals. I think you're going to bring a fantastic perspective today on this topic. So if we move to the next slide, as I mentioned, this is the official launch of our 2021 Strategic CAO survey results. So we're going to take you through the background of that survey, and then we're going to unpack some of the most important salient points coming out of what CAOs are saying. And those 3 points are working even more digitally, managing risk through technology, and delivering insights for strategic business decisions. So with that, let's dive into the survey results and give you a little bit of background of the context and the value that we're seeing coming out of the respondents here. So this year is our 3rd annual survey where we took a deeper dive into the 4 core pillars of responsibility of the CAO around governance and compliance, transactions, transformation, and business partnerships. This year, we had 360 respondents across both public and private companies in a wide range of industries. We've also taken the 360-degree approach in executing this survey, where we've not only been able to interview 150 CAOs, but we've also interviewed a number of executives, functional peers, and direct reports to the CAO to make sure we're getting a complete perspective on that office and what are the things driving that office into the future. So as mentioned, about 57% of the respondents were public, 43% were private. And as you can see from a company revenue size, it really spans the gamut of many various size companies. So we think this is a great reflection of what's going on today with the CAO's office. One of the things that we've seen as we start to dive into the results of this, of all the responses coming through, is that the CAOs themselves play a strategic and very critical role in every organization in which they serve. And those roles broadly and are relatively evenly balanced between governance and compliance, transformation, transactions, and business partnerships. That was consistent last year. It is this year. And the expectation as we ask them for the next 2 to 5 years is those roles will likely stay similar in the level of effort in which they need to allocate time. However, what we are also seeing is that the demand and rate of change in which the businesses are changing is driving a tremendous need for CAOs to adopt technology, automation, and other enablers to continue to remain effective in those roles. And that's going to be the theme of this year's survey results, and what we're really going to dive into as we move through this session. So let's dive into the first topic, which is working even more digitally. You know, one of the things we wanted to start off with was getting an executive's view on the CAO's office. And overwhelmingly, executives are relying on the CAO's office to provide strategic financial support and a platform to enable businesses to grow and the business to achieve its objectives. However, over half of executives agree that the key challenge which impedes the CAO from meeting these objectives is a large volume of manual tasks and a desire for greater automation. And this is really impeding their ability and the CAO's ability to focus on other things around transformation, upskilling their talent pool to focus more on analytics, and using more technology to really drive remote working success. So with that, if we move to the next slide, what we then said, well, what are CAOs and what is their preference and how are they dealing with this expectation of their executives and senior leaders of the organization? And CAOs are overwhelmingly preferring to transform processes within their organization through automation, with the one exception of technical accounting and financial reporting matters, where CAOs are looking to new technologies or co-sourcing as their preferred approach to address that area. So Dara, maybe I could bring you into this conversation and just understand from your perspective, you know, how are you seeing this at T-Mobile, and how have you seen automation improve the quality of work product amongst your team?
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. It's great to be here and to connect with you again, as well as learn more from both Aaron and Jim. So thank you for the opportunity. You know, I think one of the many benefits of process automation is really the ability to step back and reevaluate your process and/or your task that you want to automate from the start. It's been incredibly helpful for myself and my team for us to evaluate what we think are very cumbersome yet mundane type of tasks, those that are very repeatable, break them down and re-engineer them, and then go ahead and automate them, and pull a lot of the human elements out of that process, which, you know, tends to then increase the quality because you don't have any of that human input. And what we have found when we do this is that, in fact, we are not surprisingly saving a tremendous amount of time and then allowing our folks to have more time to evaluate the data that's being generated and provide our business partners and ourselves a lot better business insights as to what that data is reporting. An example of this would be after the merger, we needed to go ahead and consolidate both the Sprint and T-Mobile consolidation processes and integrate those. And we did that through a massive automation process. And we were able to cut our close down by 10 days and also sat back and thought through the reporting and what it is that we wanted to, the analyses and such that we wanted to automate, and really cut down on our reporting about 50% as well. So found that to be incredibly helpful. I know we'll go into more detail in a bit, but I think as far as from a quality perspective, the more you can automate and take a lot of the human touch out of the process, the better the quality.
Great, thanks for that, Dara, appreciate it. And Aaron, maybe I can also bring you in as well. I mean, our survey results are showing, you know, the importance of eliminating, you know, really manual and low value tasks within the chief accounting officer's department. And I've always looked to you and Qualcomm as one that is incredibly well run and highly efficient in their teams. So I'd be interested in your perspective on what are you doing to, really drive efficiency and through automation at Qualcomm.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And I echoed Dara's comments. Really happy to be here and share the experiences that I've had at Qualcomm. So we actually started with robotics process automation in 2018, really focused on those manual tasks, those high volume of transactions. So a little bit dissimilar to Dara, where she's taking an end-to-end process and really revamping it. We looked at smaller components within our processes, made sure those components were effective, and then looked to automate them in order to start out on a small basis. We then moved to process mining and really focused on two key areas here. One is metrics and reporting. So for instance, we have our manual journal entries that are approved by the system. So somebody puts in a manual journal entry, the system automatically routes it to the right reviewer. Using process mining in order to look at how long it takes a reviewer from the time they open up the MJE to the time they actually approve it. And do we think that's a sufficient amount of time? If it's a small amount of time, what's driving that? Was it a simple MJE? Did they review stuff offline? Or do we have some training opportunities in order to drive increased quality of our manual journal entries? And then the second prong we looked at as it related to data mining was identifying inefficiencies within our processes. So for instance, we had a number of holds within accounts payable. So somebody has to go in, put the payment on hold, do something manually in order to release the hold. Why are we having these holds? So process mining really allowed us to look at the process that we have relative to the process that we should have and kick out anomalies that allowed us to reach out to vendors to change some of the information on the invoices that they sent over, to enable automated processing within the system, less manual touching, driving higher quality there. And then finally, most recently, we're digging into data analytics. And again, two prongs in this area. Compliance. So for example, are we making multiple payments to vendors? Why are we doing that? Assessing the reasons why, identifying that, and in that instance, hopefully recovering money back from the vendor as well. And then also data aggregation. There's so much manual work that has to be done within Qualcomm in terms of pulling information from different systems. How can we automate that using these data analytics tool? To Dara's point, less time for the manual work, more time for analytics, and driving higher quality. Those are the areas that we focused on, Tim.
Oh, that's fantastic. Again, I can tell, it brings to light what we're experiencing at Qualcomm and T-Mobile. So thank you so much. And Jim, I'd be interested in your perspective. The survey results here are saying that, as an alternative to automation, CAOs are also looking to developing and implementing new technologies. Could you share some of the new technologies you're seeing in the market today and the benefits they're bringing to the different organizations?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tim. Really, as you look at the data here, from automation and new technologies kind of being, two of the main pieces, and then you piece together what Dara and Aaron has just shared with us, the story, if you go back, right, when ERP has been serving us for all these decades, but at the end of the day, all the exceptions that fall out gave birth to this whole ecosystem of RPA, automation, et cetera. And as different companies, as you've heard here, have taken advantage of that, at the end of the day, though, there's still even more to do. You've heard, Dara and Aaron share some of those examples, but I've seen a big focus, or we've seen many of our clients on these types of things of looking at revisiting these processes from an end-to-end perspective, have a pure process view, and really look to streamline straight through processing, which takes doing all that kind of homework and revisiting some of these in an end-to-end view that Dara and Aaron had shared with us. So a couple of things that we're seeing, Tim, for specifically, if I look at some of the technologies in these areas, and we look at like account reconciliations or other back office activities, so things like Blackline, Trintech, OneStream that are very powerful. We've seen a lot of organizations hadn't really harnessed the end-to-end or straight through full power of those types of technologies. So we're seeing that coming back around. And two other areas that are interesting are looking at, like when we talk about variances is near and dear to all of our hearts, and looking at anomaly detection. Which is supported not only by the technology that's there to be able to pull those out, but using artificial intelligence and machine learning to keep evaluating that. I mean, there's no silver bullet, but it's still evolving, but it brings those anomalies to life, which then feeds into another area, Tim, which is on the forecasting side of really looking at intelligent forecasting as a true enabler going forward and from a technology perspective. So those are just a few areas I would share with the team here.
That's great. Yeah, as we kind of dive into the next slide, I think, Jim, that's a great kind of overview and what we're seeing around technology enablers that are driving digital finance transformation is the CAO's office is becoming much more advanced, but overwhelmingly, at least to date, they have really adopted cloud, whether that be on ERP, analytics, and other financial close technologies. And that's something that seems to be very comfortable in the CAO's office and driving digital finance transformation. Some of the more perhaps advanced areas around RPA, Accounting Hub, AI or cognitive learning capabilities are currently less being used, but that could also be as a result of maybe a phase 2 down the road as data gets cleansed, centralized, and in the cloud and easier to access. These other newer technologies may gain greater adoption. But at least today, the emphasis is on cloud. And so, Dara, maybe you could share, how is cloud starting to transform T-Mobile, and what are some of the benefits you're seeing within your teams?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say that for us at T-Mobile, we probably mirror a number of these stats here. We're currently in the process of embarking on this broader back office enterprise transformation, and certainly looking at all of the different cloud tools that are available to us. And it's interesting, right? Those are really tough decisions to make. We're used to on-prem from a security perspective, a cost perspective as well, and now contemplating, full cloud, which would be public, or do we go with an on-prem with a private cloud, which seems to be sort of a nice hybrid space to be, and trying to understand and assess what will the performance be of our high volume activities and value streams. So we're looking at a broader enterprise tech stack and evaluating a number of different technologies and what's the right stack of those technologies to support us on a go-forward basis versus just one ERP. But we've been spending quite a bit of time looking at data, and we have massive amounts of data, and we really needed to ensure that we had the proper data governance. So we've taken a number of data sets, out of on-prem sort of siloed platforms and have put them into a fantastic cloud application, which from the work that we've done to date has proven to us to really minimize a lot of the risk around a great data governance platform. It's certainly increased speed and performance. The accessibility to the data has been fantastic, and then the ability to share that data with others is wonderful. But also does require the use of a lot of analytics and visualization tools. And that's where I would say the company has probably spent a number of years, really building up bench strength there on the analytics. Power BI being obviously a key tool because it's so simple to use and works really well on flat tables like Excel. So I would say I see that quite a bit. And then Tableau is another tool that we utilize often just because we've got multiple data sources that we're dealing with, and it's a lot of big data, and it's able to simplify it and put it into a format that is visual, which is much easier than for the reader or user of the reporting, to digest the information. So I would say analytics, the robotics, the accounting hub, all key things being utilized heavily today. Digital process mining is something we're dipping into quite a bit more, especially as we go through the transformation journey and we're evaluating our end-to-end processes, and then really looking to get to that best sort of cloud tech stack or ERP at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Well, what I'd like to do here is, stick with the theme of even working more digitally, but pivot a little bit to, really what we've all experienced over the last 2 years, which is, quite honestly, we've all been taking in the joys of remote working, good or bad or indifferent. But I think what we're hearing from CAOs is that many are looking to certain technologies to enable connectivity and collaboration. And to the extent those are in place, adopted, and working effectively, much of the CAO's role in office is being very successful in a hybrid work environment. Even more so than having to look to some of these other things around implementing different controls, changing teams, expanding the footprint and geographic footprint around acquiring talent. All those are very meaningful. These tools around connectivity and collaboration have been the keys to success. So maybe, Aaron, I could ask you, from a Qualcomm perspective, what are some of the things you've done to implement some of these tools to enable connectivity and collaboration to really help you continue to be successful, over the past couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at Qualcomm, we were lucky in that we went live with Microsoft Teams 1 week before we went into this work from home model. It just so happened that it worked out in that time, just by pure luck. But I do think things like Zoom and Teams and Google Meet have really been critical for us to be able to be successful in this work from home environment. The ease of the use of those tools has greatly contributed to collaboration, the ability to be on video and still connect with somebody, the chat feature and the ability to just make a quick phone call if you're, have something that you're chatting about that would be easier to be facilitated through a discussion. It's been really the support that we needed in order to get through this past couple of years. We saw at Qualcomm, we saw this coming. I'm sure a lot of companies did, work from home after what happened to China and then the travel lockdown. So we actually started looking at our processes before we went into work from home from a quarter end, month end close perspective, what might have to change, what might be impacted. And we had automated so much that very little actually had to be impacted. So that first quarter, I was actually more nervous about infrastructure. I have 2/3 of my team that sits in Hyderabad in India. And do they have the infrastructure to support that many people having internet connections, all working from home? So that's what I was most nervous about. And yes, it was fine. We actually, knock on wood, have had very little impact to our close process as a result of this environment. I actually think what's happened is people feel too connected. We do pulse surveys every quarter, and what's come out of those is people are having trouble disconnecting. So we've actually focused our efforts on how do we enable an environment where people feel that they can shut their computers down at the end of the day, not always be connected, particularly in this global environment where teams either have to work early morning or late into the evening in order to connect with each other across borders. So really focus our efforts on that, implementing things like a productivity zone where no meetings are to be booked so people can have uninterrupted time. That's where I've found the challenges rather than being able to connect in this environment, Tim.
That's great. And I think those are things we are all struggling with. And how do we, keep our team successful, keep our people happy as well as engaged. So I think those are fantastic points. What I'd like to do now is maybe shift to managing risk through technology. And this is another theme that we're seeing coming out of the CAO survey this year, where technology is not only critical to us being effective, but also really around the governance and compliance aspects of the CAO's role. And so when we talk to executives, peers, and direct reports, all overwhelmingly agree that the CAO's role is critical and fundamental to achieving governance and compliance objectives within their organization. But one of the interesting things they've also said is that the CAO has a unique ability to really drive value in their approach to implementing risk management protocols, implementing controls, and achieving those governance and compliance objectives. And so I think that approach and the influence the CAO has is ever more critical, as we try and extract greater value in our organization. So, maybe Aaron, I could also turn back to you just to understand your perspective on that, and what are you doing to take a value lens to your approach to governance and compliance activities?
Absolutely. So, when we started off implementing these technology tools, we really focused on driving cost savings. And so we started with RPA. How are we going to get cost savings? How are we going to reduce headcount through that initiative? And after the first phase, we actually did not get the cost savings that we anticipated, and actually changed our mind shift in that discussion. And it was then focused on how do we drive quality through the use of these tools rather than cost savings through the use of these tools. Then having the ability to upskill, which Tim, you mentioned earlier, upskill our employee base, provide more time for analysis, giving them the tools and the skills in order to drive analysis. And so our view has completely shifted from when we first started. And then outside our organization, we are now starting to look at end-to-end processes, I would say over the past year or so. So not just the accounting, not the processes within the accounting organization, but really starting at the beginning. Accounting is downstream. So let's look at the process starting from the beginning of the process outside the accounting organization, bringing that process efficiency, technology-enabled mindset then to those organizations and helping them then drive efficiencies through their processes. And so we really focused on how do we bring that mindset outside of accounting and give those teams the skills and tools that they need as well.
That's great. One of the other things as we move to the next slide is, around the importance of technology in addressing risk management. And I think what we're seeing from the CAOs that responded to these surveys is that, they're saying the level of importance of using technology to address risk management across each of their core functions is very high, approximating 80% in many instances. However, there's an opportunity gap that we're observing because the extent of utilization of technology to address risk management is lower. And so as you think about, the expanse of data, as auditors perhaps are starting to use data and analytic tools to execute audits and look at things at scale on a real-time basis, whether that's in the audit process, whether that's in evaluating a target through a transaction, or doing other activities, using technology is becoming ever more critical. So Jim, I'd love to get your perspective on how you're seeing companies, either use or adopt technology in addressing risk management and some of the benefits coming out of that.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at this, you see it's clearly important to everyone. It's not surprising, but how do you utilize it? And it's about time, right? And you heard about it from Dara and Aaron about process. And what we're seeing, it's three kind of things, Tim. The activities are running the business. Okay, so all of we heard a couple of great stories about close. How do you really focus on those and automate those and make those things as sure as possible? But then that frees up time to clearly be able to decide what to transform for the business. So you have run the business and then transform the business, which takes leaders like Dara and Aaron to be able to look at those things from an end-to-end perspective, help to prioritize those, help to initiate those. And again, it's just running the business while transforming it, like changing the wheel on the bus while it's moving. It's easier said than done. And then the third piece is obviously then focusing on those value add insights, Tim. So those are the, it's just that chicken and the egg type of scenario. But as you've seen from the previous slides and the stories we've heard here, the technologies do exist. And I think like automated controls, all of those things really being fully embraced, and to even eliminate testing or drastically change it as it goes in the future, to focus on the exceptions. Again, we talked about the exceptions earlier for automation, but now, hey, what are the real true exceptions where our leaders and the organizations can focus on that? And the last thing I'll say, Tim, about this slide, what you see about this, you don't have to wait. Meaning, it doesn't have to have a total sequential piece. Like you could actually explore a forecasting transformation. You can explore a different type of thing, and you don't have to wait for basic automation to be in place. Because of the cloud technologies that are out there, you can focus on capturing that data and analytical views and the different views that are needed to actually help make decisions. So those are a couple of things that are happening in the space there, Tim.
That's great. I appreciate that, Jim. I think there's a lot out there for sure. And I think how we all start taking bites out of that apple is going to be important, because there clearly is an opportunity gap here, I think, to close. So if we move to the next slide here, the other thing that's coming out of the survey is that CAOs are critical to managing risk through event-driven transactions, whether that's going public for the first time, executing a buy-side or sell-side M&A deal. And the results are saying, look, CAOs are absolutely critical when it comes to M&A. And our survey also shows that executives, peers, and direct reports really look to the CAO to ensure that transactional controls and risk management through the transaction are managed effectively. And so, that is a tall order, especially when I think of large deals, mergers of equals, if you will, of somebody like a T-Mobile and a Sprint. So Dara, it'd be great to get your perspective on, what have you had to do, or what are some of the critical asks that you've had to do of your team to ensure that managing controls and risk throughout your deal was done successfully?
Such a great question. Well, what's interesting is I actually took the role at T-Mobile because of the challenges that the merger and the integration of the two very large behemoth organizations would create. So it's been a lot of fun. I would say I've sort of looked at it in three phases. First phase being just simply the immediate integration that's required of the two entities to come together and report out as one. Obviously very focused on then what are the people, the process, and the tools to do that. Then the second being that longer term, business-led sort of back office transformation, which actually is I am co-leading with our one of our IT leaders, and working with our procurement and supply chain organization to fully review our end-to-end processes all the way through our back office, similar to what Aaron was speaking to earlier, which is incredibly important because you need to understand what's happening upstream and downstream in order to really reconfigure your target operating model and reconfigure your tool set. So that longer term transformation takes several years. And what we also want to make sure that we're focused on to keep our people motivated and for them to see the benefit of all the time and investment, as well as the additional resources that we're throwing at the transformation, is where do we get those quick wins? Where do we innovate, automate, simplify things, and evaluate things in the short term, so that people can see, the fruit of their labor and just the benefits of all this additional activity. So I would say those are the three areas that I'm very focused on, in addition to the normal BAU, CAO responsibilities. And I have to work, myself and my team, my finance transformation office team, we have to work really closely with all of the control owners, our SOX team, our internal audit team, our data governance team, to ensure that as we're working through these different work streams, that we are closely monitoring the risk, any changes or impacts of some of these process change, people change, and such, to ensure that there is absolutely no impact to quality, and that we're always looking to simplify and streamline, and hopefully at the end of the day get to a more flexible, simple framework. So I would say that that's been probably the biggest impact to the CAO role here at T-Mobile as a result of the merger.
That's great. Yeah, we've all been seeing that from the outside in, and I think knowing that there's a lot going on there. So it's comforting to know we've got the right people at the top. So maybe we can now pivot really to our final point that we want to really focus on today is around delivering insights for strategic business decisions. And the survey results are saying overwhelmingly that the CAO is a fundamental pillar to every organization. And they're looking to them in many different aspects as a business partner. And so when we talk to executives, and while a quarter of them suggest the CAO should spend most of their time on governance and compliance activities, an overwhelming 75% believe that CEOs need and should be partnering with the business to enable the company to achieve its objectives. While only 11% of those executives are saying that the CAO is getting that right, is getting that business partnering activity right to enable the front office and middle office to be successful. And so I think this is also a great opportunity as CEOs continue to expand their role and influence throughout the organization to meet some of those executive expectations. So Jim, maybe I could bring you in, just to understand, what are you seeing from a finance transformation perspective on how the CAO is moving into, different aspects of the business to be that business partner, and potentially maybe even using technology to make that successful?
Yeah, what we're seeing is, we talked about this, is, to enable this, it really takes, automating and really removing all that run the business type of work. Doesn't mean you're obviously not fully on top of it and making sure it all comes together, but eliminating all that mundane work time. Because when you look here, the business partnering strategic activities requires leaders to be able to have a seat at the table as the new products, the new markets, the different compelling events that, like the big ones like Dara is dealing with, having a seat at that table early and often to plan for that, Tim. So again, it's about having that seat at the table. But as certain things, when you get close to the business partners, what are the true use cases or the key problems you want to solve for them? And so getting a few wins of them to just really, say, hey, look, I was working with the sales ops leader in this region. We actually were able to use some analytics and pull some information, not just from finance, but accounting and other areas to actually help solve those problems. And we're seeing the CAO role playing a more and more active role in that. But again, it's focusing on, the fun exceptions, if you will, to actually bring the business forward.
That's great. Yeah, just from an advisor's perspective, I see, this becoming ever more, important, just as, complexity, regulation are such an important aspect of the environment we all operate. And in many instances, the business is looking to the CAO to help translate that. And I think that will continue to be a theme as we even progress into the future. Well, why don't we move to the next slide here? And, moving back to a transactional perspective, around event-driven transactions, so M&A or going public. And I think, we've covered the fact that the CAO is very critical to all of those non-routine event-driven transactions. But what our survey is also indicating is that the CAO's role is going to continue to expand, beyond the compliance and risk management functions today, and getting into more strategic aspects of the business. Two of the things that have been highlighted are around being more focused on engaging with stakeholder communications, as well as defining that future state operating model, are two of the opportunities that are expanding today and are likely to continue to expand into the future. Dara, you mentioned previously that, this is something you've been very focused on, with the Sprint T-Mobile merger. And so it'd be great to get your perspective on what are some of those strategic partnerships that you've been able to assist with to make that a successful transaction.
Yeah, with the merger, we obviously had a new CEO that took helm at the same time, and he was very quick to put forth the corporate priorities and initiatives to support those corporate priorities. So then my leadership team, we sat back and said, okay, how is it that we're going to support those corporate initiatives? And we ensure that we have a seat at the table with the senior leadership team to understand what it is that they need to do to meet the corporate priorities, and then how does that actually impact us in the back office. And what's great is, because I think that the company has done a good job of this, historically, is that the senior leadership team really values the input and direction up front as they're, contemplating some of their different options. And I think that really comes down to being able to provide them, timely information to help with that strategic decision making. But going a little bit more granular, it's interesting because with every new initiative, every new promotion, every new line of business, omni-channel decision, whatever that is, has a tremendous amount of impact on the back office, flowing all the way, like, again, getting back to procurement, supply chain, the IT environment. What I have found has really changed for the CAO org, or at least my orgs historically over the last 10 years, is that we are far more involved now up front in working and listening to the business partner and working with our IT business partners and understanding what the requirements are that are going to be necessary, and what projects are going to be necessary and the resources associated with that, to build out those business requirements, and then go ahead and put those business requirements into a testing environment, work through the kinks on that, as well as work through all the communications with leadership on the progress, and then the back end, putting into production, monitoring those activities. So I would say that finance IT handshake that's in handoff that's going on all the time. And I would say, we've got at least 200 projects, that we're working through on a weekly basis that we're monitoring, in addition to these, broader transformation, integration type of activities. And that is something that's really very new and very different. And I'm just incredibly impressed with the skill set that a lot of our finance professionals bring to the table today. The level of L&D that's required to continue to upskill to be able to address a lot of these technologies is a big part of sort of the people, pillar strategy that has to be in place as well. So again, it's all about being at the seat of the table, or having a seat at the table to understand what's really important to them, and then to be able to bring that back to the team. How do we operationalize this, and then communicate the status with leadership to increase their confidence in the ability of the back office to be able to support them and really help with the prioritization as well. So in addition to deal modeling up front and supporting getting things through close and all of that, the downstream and the longer term journey is equally as important, and certainly important to the business partnering overall.
Yeah, that's great. I think this is something that is in a very, I know this team at least is operating principally in a TMT industry space, and with the volume of transactions that are out there and expected to continue to remain in a high elevated environment over the coming years, I think this is going to be a really critical part to the CAO's office. So thanks for that, Dara, and sharing those insights. And so I'd like to also pivot now as far as, under the theme of being that strategic business partner, ESG, or environmental, social, and governance reporting and initiatives have really rocketed to the forefront of the agenda for many organizations, as we're all experiencing real life events around, climate change and some of the social aspects going on. And we've seen CAOs saying, if they don't get this right, they're not going to keep their job. And so, you know, boards, executives all agree that ESG is becoming a really critical part of communicating and vocalizing how they're being that social, you know, good socially minded company and addressing all of their stakeholders' demands. And the other thing that we're seeing coming out of the survey this year is that executives believe that the CAOs are best positioned to drive data collection and reporting around ESG, whereas 58% of them, you know, were very confident in that statement. And a lot of that is driven because of, you know, the CAO and their team's ability to really drive robust process and control and manage large volumes of financial, accounting, and operational data, you know, around traditional aspects of SEC reporting, management reporting, other stakeholder communications. And ESG is while that data is coming from different sources and that data taxonomy is slightly different and evolving, a lot of those same skill sets are likely going to transport nicely over to an ESG reporting environment. So Aaron, maybe I could ask you in your perspective, I know Qualcomm's made some very aggressive net zero emission targets out there. You know, how has ESG started to impact, you know, your role in the CAO's office?
Yeah, Tim, at this point, it's actually a fairly limited impact. In the 10K, we have maybe 2 to 3 pages dedicated to ESG topics. It started last year, more focused on human capital. We just filed our 10K about a month ago. We've added some additional information about topics other than human capital management, but it's mostly qualitative at this point, very little quantitative information. So our ESG function rolls up to our government affairs organization within operations. It's not within finance. So leading up to the 10K, I spent some time with the lead of that group, understanding how they go about gathering data, maintaining data validation procedures that they have. But I would say it was a pretty light touch. I do think the question, Tim, you alluded to this, is what is the role of the CAO in the future as it relates to ESG? I think that's the key question to be asking, particularly with the SEC's focus on it. It's a matter of time, in my view, as to whether it's going to be in an SEC filing, whether it's in the 10K or a separate filing. Looks like it's leaning towards the 10K. I agree with you, Tim. I do think the Chief Accounting Officer's organization is best suited to develop the processes that are ready for SOX-like testing, develop the processes, controls, documentation, data validation procedures that are necessary for this information to go in a 10K document. And that's not to imply that corporate responsibilities reports should have less rigor and accuracy than a 10K. But if it's going to be subject to an audit, which I think is a possibility at this point, it does require a different level of documentation and support maintenance than if it's not subject to an audit. And I do believe the Chief Accounting Organization is best suited for this. And I'm certainly not advocating for more work, but I think from a governance perspective, I personally think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of questions, but I would agree with you. I think this is, you know, as investors starting to make decisions on this information and other stakeholders are holding the company accountable and the organizations are making commitments, you know, around net zero that are going to have financial consequences to that, either in funding those net zero commitments or not achieving them. I think the CAO is going to be, you know, at the center of making sure that those commitments are supportable, accurate, and you know, auditable to some extent. Maybe one other observation I'd make on this slide is, you know, for those 43% of executives that did not recommend that the CAO was best suited to handle the ESG data collection and reporting, I think the reasons they're showing us or saying why that is the case is they're saying the CAO does not have access to relevant reporting metrics and data associated with this. The CAO may be siloed in their role and does not interact with the other business functions. or the CAO does not have a full understanding of the interests of the organization around ESG. And I would just say that, you know, that seems to me to be an opportunity, right? It's not that the CAO is not going to be best suited to handle this new ask and activity. But I think addressing these activities where, you know, a sustainability report's coming out of some other non-finance organization, getting access to that, and addressing these 3 points will probably move that executive expectation closer towards 100% saying, you know, you got the ball here, CAO, let's make it happen. So anyways, just some observation here on this. Well, look, I think this has been overall a great discussion. I really appreciate, you know, Dara, Aaron, and Jim, you joining me today and helping us launch our 2021 CAO survey and unpacking what is a strategic CAO. I think it's been, you know, a great discussion, and we've really started to bring to life some of the participant results. You know, maybe I'll just pause briefly and see if there's any other comments that Dara, Aaron, or Jim, you would like to make at this point in time as we start to bring this to a close.
No comments from me. Just want to say thank you, and I really enjoyed getting to know and working with Aaron and Jim through this process. So look forward to future opportunities to get together. Thanks for the invite, Tim.
Absolutely.
And I'll just say thank you so much for having me. I think as CAOs, we have a lot on our plate. It's helpful to hear other views and perspectives as to where areas of focus are. And so thank you for enabling this content. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I'll round it out by just saying I think it was great to get a real good view from these amazing leaders here in terms of the future of finance and accounting. You know, there's a lot more to come, and it's happening pretty fast. So yeah, thanks for the time, Tim.
Yeah, and we have another minute or two here, and I'm seeing a question that just came in about, you know, we do have a number of controllers here in the audience as well who are aspiring to be a CAO. And I mean, just from a career advice perspective, you know, maybe Darren or Aaron or Dara, you could maybe just give a minute on, you know, what are some of the things that have helped you kind of elevate your career into moving out of the controllership into a CAO organization? Are there certain skills that you'd point to that you would recommend these controllers really focus on?
I can start and turn it over to Dara. I would say don't focus on your job title and job description, and really do not hesitate to get out, meet people in the business, influence the business, establish those relationships, speak up when you feel that you can add value, speak up more often than you think, and focus on, again, not just areas within accounting, but overall risk and compliance and driving business value.
That's great.
Aaron said it perfectly. I agree 100%. Getting outside of your comfort zone and meeting with the senior leadership team, wherever it is that you're most comfortable to start, and then go beyond that, push yourself to get out there, meet with them, understand, you know, what it is that they're concerned about, or what it is that's working, or what value they think that is being derived from the finance organization, and if possible, your team in particular. I think you'll be surprised actually at how much people want to help you succeed in your career. They want to see you grow. They want to see you develop. They want to share and talk about what it is that they're doing. And those little tidbits of information just make a huge difference on what it is and how it is that you do your job on a daily basis. And I think just make the job a lot more interesting. So have fun with it, enjoy it, get out of your comfort zone. You'll be amazed at where a lot of those people and those networks land, and how your career will grow, you know, based on those connections.
Well, thank you. I mean, look, I I couldn't be happier having you as panelists, and I appreciate you sharing those insights. I would encourage the audience to access the KPMG webpage here to further thought leadership around the CAO. You can download the CAO Spotlight on illuminating value of the Strategic Chief Accounting Officer, which is the complete survey results from that webpage, as well as other thought leadership around the CAO as a transformation leader as well.